Hello everybody, happy Wednesday. We have a few new tricks up our sleeve to show you today to tell us where we are in this cycle, and we are so close. And there's lots of good stuff happening around the world. Let's jump in. This is going to be called Leading Indicator, but we'll also talk about how the charts are setting up for an explosion, how certain players are stacking a lot, how a big dumpage happened and why, and a canary in the mine. So let's jump in. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to the mods in the chat too. And shout out as well to, let me see who they have. Andre Ramiro just signed up for Patreon. Nice to be with the family. And speaking of Patreon family, huge birthday shout out to the lovely Kiwi Robin, our community manager with a huge heart. Happy birthday, buddy. See you soon. I hope you're having a nice whiskey today. Now, Bitcoin Only playlist will be here if you just want Bitcoin Only content. And we have only 16 days to go. And Bitcoin is still not doing too much. Howdy, saluti. We have Swiss people here too. Awesome. Now, a couple of things we will tackle first. First of all, Grayscale has been the stain, let's call it, on the space for the last 56 days. But the good news is Fidelity Bitcoin ETF now has higher volume than Grayscale so far today. That's a big sign. And yesterday I was a bit nervous because I saw a big dump happen and I was afraid we'd have another negative red day, but we didn't. We'll get to that in a minute, as well as some charts, as well as some really cool stuff. So that's the spot volume so far. It's probably a lot higher now. Now, first piece of news, and this is from Ben Workman. Shout out to Sanjay as well, who brought it to my attention early this morning. Here you can see basically the buy and sell walls that are mirrored with candles. And right now we have a lid at around 66,500, and that lid is held by a sell order for 52 Bitcoin. And this is kind of, it's like the meme with the little latch that's a cracker or something across a door. But looking at previous discussions about things like bids and offers appearing at crucial price points, we're witnessing this scenario again around that, call it 66.5 mark. And, what typically happens is these things get moved if it does get close. But what the market makers probably are trying to do is dampen the surge, keep a lid on the price action so others can stack. We know there's manipulation going on. We know what market makers do. We know they hunt longs and shorts with leverage. And the question is, how long can this tactic prevail? The question is, there's not much of a commitment to 50 Bitcoin, whether it will be sold or not. But there is some crazy good stuff happening. But there's also a really cool leading indicator that we've noticed as well. And that is Bitcoin's performance is echoed like a canary in the mine by the price action from MicroStrategy. We'll see what's happening there. But first, let's look at this lid. Cool little graphic. A lot of Bitcoin wants to pop higher, and the lid is going to pop. But now let's look at MicroStrategy. This is the chart of MicroStrategy divided by Bitcoin. When you have a pair, the first one that comes, if that's going higher than the second one, it's outperforming. And this is the performance of MicroStrategy against Bitcoin since the launch of the ETFs. And you can see here, Bitcoin had a huge run, but MicroStrategy smoked it too. It is up from the beginning of the ETF launch. It is up over 130%. Now, the question is, what has happened since that launch? Well, there's been a lot more speculation into MicroStrategy. Now, you look at the blue, the trend is clearly up. We had one hedge fund go after MicroStrategy. They went short MicroStrategy, they went long Bitcoin. That burnt them about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And we saw that when we had the huge scam and squeeze spike to $2,000. Well, that same thing's happening again. And last week we had another short hedge fund come after it. But they don't understand the infinite money glitch that is MicroStrategy and how that works. So I expect to get, that hedge fund to get wrecked too as we go forward. But the key thing about this chart, it indicates where Bitcoin is going to go next. It's as if MicroStrategy has a spidey sense and it leads the way for the Bitcoin price. We'll see if I'm correct in a couple of days, but that's what we see here in these charts. Now, other cool charts. Shout out to Plan B. We are actually at the price of the stock to model price right now. We have what's called stock to flow model alignment. A lot of people mocked this model, but this model works. It works for real estate. It works for platinum. It works for gold. It doesn't work for diamonds because that's a completely manipulated market. But anyway, the Bitcoin value is extremely aligned with this flow line. That's the gray line here, and we are at that level. And this has actually happened at all past halvings. You can see how the Bitcoin price aligns with the actual gray lines. Now, a couple of things to point out from this chart is, first of all, we are here right now, but we are also before the halving. And Plan B said $100,000 Bitcoin is an easy, achievable target in 2024 and a lot higher in 2025. Now, what does the stock to flow model say? Well, the stock to flow model says 500,000. That's the next big gray line up there. And I know that sounds crazy, but just think of this. The stock to flow model has worked all along. Will it discontinue working? Perhaps. Could we go to 500,000? I don't know. But the grumblings that I hear of, literally, there are sovereigns in the Middle East. They are buying Bitcoin, but they're doing it very quietly because they don't want anybody else to catch on. They want to fill their bags before anybody else does. And this is a fact of what's going on right now. Let's look at one other chart too, which is super interesting from Plan B as well. This is the relative strength index of Bitcoin. Super Soul Man, thank you for coming. And I've been saying for 18 months now, this time is different. We have never had an RSI level of 77 before the Bitcoin halving. So not only are things running higher and earlier, but they're breaking records everywhere. Okay, now the most important thing about this though is we've had in historic cycles diminishing returns. But when you see an RSI dip before the halving, that shows you it's kind of like a diminishing return trend. This time, we are higher than ever before and no dip in RSI, which tells us, again, this time is different and maybe diminishing returns are a thing of the past because Bitcoin is scarcer and harder than ever before in a diminishing availability cycle with money flow like we've never seen before. It's going to be crazy. Forget the noise right now. People are saying, where's the $100,000 Bitcoin before the halving and all that type of stuff. It's like last year, my target was 42,000 by the halving. We are not far from 70,000, which is already insane. And we're going to go a lot higher, but we just don't know when. But the point is, this time is very, very different. And I can show you 25 different charts that say the same thing. Let's look at another thing that's happening right now. This is the Bitcoin inventory on exchanges from CryptoQuant. You can see here, just focus on the green line. The rest, it doesn't really matter. That's the amount of spot Bitcoin on exchanges. It is just being drained ever since January 2021 and will continue to be drained as we see large amounts of money disappearing from places like Coinbase, etc., etc. And our time, I see you out there. Thank you for your kind words. Now, who else is stacking Bitcoin? Who else has Bitcoin? This is a cool chart from HODL 15. Before we get into some of the deeper graphics, HODL 15 Capital says, as of the 2nd of April, 2024, these are the amounts of Bitcoin held by nation states. Shout out to Team UK. Your government has 61,000 confiscated Bitcoin. Germany has 50,000. Ukraine, 46,000. El Salvador, 5,709 in their HODL bag, which they bought and mined. The rest were all confiscated or seized. China, 190,000. US, 215,000. And there's rumors they might be selling 30,000 Bitcoin. But again, the Bitcoin market can suck that in. They could actually be being sold as we speak right now, or transferred directly to Fidelity or BlackRock. Who knows? Or somebody else, which we'll talk to about in a minute. Now, Coinbase, speaking of Coinbase, Coinbase did decide to choose Lightspark as their way of helping scale the Bitcoin network across all of their platforms and coming to 100 plus countries soon. So that'll be interesting. And I don't know how Lightspark works in conjunction with Lightning. But again, the more that it helps adoption, the better it is for the whole space. And a little bit of Bitcoin history from Rizzo, which is always important. And we always say, Bitcoin is an IQ test. But when you look at certain assets, by the way, the tip for investors, I'll come back to this story in a minute, follow what the smart people do, okay? They see things way before the rest of the posse. And shout out to Jensen. He said this, how many years ago? 6 years ago. He said, and he's the CEO of NVIDIA, Bitcoin is here to stay. It's going to be here for a long time. So well done there. And excuse me, the price of Bitcoin back then was $6,000. And now it's $65,000 in 6 years. So not bad. 11x, not bad. Excuse me. Let's look at some charts real quick. There's a couple of interesting little twists in here, and I created some new artifacts as well. This is the Bitcoin black hole time. Sorry, drinking some water. So first of all, day 56, raw numbers. So we had a pretty consistent day. Day 55 and day 56 for Fidelity, exactly the same amount pretty much, 44 million. BlackRock had 150 million, and I was worried because for the first time ever, ARK ETF dropped a big amount, $87.5 million, and that was alongside 81.9 for Grayscale. So for the first time ever in history, there was a dump out of ARK, and second of all, it was bigger than the dump out of Grayscale. So let's see what that looks like on the chart. You can see Grayscale, green line up, and it intersects almost perfectly with the dump from ARK. Now, I did check on the ARK dump. I couldn't figure out exactly who was behind it. I thought maybe because Cathie Wood, for her own fund, bought a lot of their own ETF. I thought maybe she dumped. I checked. She didn't. So we don't know who it is. But here you see Cathie Wood's ARK Bitcoin ETF outflows exceed Grayscale's for the first time ever. It was also the first time a new ETF did a huge dump of that scale in history. So what's interesting too, we'll talk about the floor price in a second. Who would go to all the effort over the last 50 days of buying Bitcoin and then dumping it? Unless they want to FOMO into some other token. I don't know. It's interesting and bizarre. But back to the money flow, it is positive again. We had a negative day the day before yesterday, but it's positive again, which is good. Not by a lot, but very good. And given the volumes today, I see that Grayscale won't have another big dump day, and it's unlikely ARK will either. That was an anomaly. And in terms of what it looks like, cumulative, we are peaking up again, and that's a tiny little blue, but we'll take it as a positive win. And what is interesting too is the trend is still up for both the actual money flow and the amount of buys over time. So we're holding on tight. In terms of the 9 new ETFs, they now have $24.2 billion in them, which includes the $15.1 billion out of Grayscale, which of course didn't go into the new ETFs. A lot of it was just speculators. I keep reminding people of that. And we now have 491,000 Bitcoin in the new ETFs. Nearly 500,000 Bitcoin, which is big in 56 days. The Grayscale Dumpage, really light day. We had the 6th best day ever, which means the 6th lowest dumpage ever in the history of Grayscale dumping for 56 days. We'll take that as a win. Are they all flushed? We don't know. I thought maybe they were about 10 days ago. I was wrong. But we'll watch this carefully. It looks positive right now. I think most of it is gone because half of the fund is gone, and that was probably the amount of speculators in there. Anyway, let's look at the amount of Bitcoin taken from the system. And this is where there's an interesting twist and a new artifact that I calculated for you all. In fact, 2 new artifacts. First of all, we had 604 Bitcoin taken out of the system yesterday. I expect quite a lot more to be taken out today, north of 1,000. And we have this fellow, Mr. 100. Everybody's saying, who is it? Who is it? It's just, no, we don't know. a billionaire, high net worth individual, massive family office, a sovereign country, probably some type of sovereign country somewhere in the Middle East is what most people assume it is. But they have bought a ton, nearly $5 billion worth of Bitcoin in a very short window of time. And the day is young. I just tweeted this a little bit earlier, a couple of hours ago. I think it was 6 in the morning. But they already bought 300 more Bitcoin today. And that is 2,566 in just 5 days. And I said I would add, this new player to the new ETFs just to give you perspective of how much is actually being stacked and see if we can draw any parallel. And here it is, a new artifact, a new chart. This is the average Bitcoin consumption per fund per day plus Mr. 100. Nobody's ever seen this before in the history of the world. It's brand new. So here, if we look at all the different funds, we have about 2,616 Bitcoin being sucked in by Fidelity alone every day. That is 3.5 times the daily issuance. No, that's nearly 3 times the daily issuance, sorry. BlackRock, 4,600 a day. BITB, 471. Now, what's interesting here, ARK have sucked in 639 Bitcoin a day since inception on average, which is super close to 636 Bitcoin a day from Mr. 100. But no, don't worry. They're not the same wallet. It's just a coincidence. I just want to hammer that home right now. But when you look at what Mr. 100 is doing, they literally are almost as big as the third largest ETF since January 11th. That is absolutely stunning. And again, 636 Bitcoin per day average buy from Mr. 100 that buys in 100 Bitcoin tranches like clockwork. Some days they buy 1,200. Some days they buy 0. Some days they buy 300, 600, 900, 700. It's all over the place. And it's now in our model so we can track that as well. But it just shows you how scarce this asset is and how many players are going after it. And that's why anybody selling right now, given all the data I've shared, is a panic seller. It's too early to sell. So ignore all the FUD and all the noise. Look at the data. The answer is always in the data, everybody. Now, a couple of quick charts here as well. Congratulations, Mr. 100. Anybody here in the audience buying, 600 Bitcoin a day? Wow, crazy. Anyhow, Bitcoin chart time. 3 little charts to show you. First of all, we have this so-called Megaphone Chart Foundation from Jelly on Twitter. And they anticipate a gigantic bullish move because of this Megaphone Chart pattern with a price target of 180,000. Mr. Jelly, I hope you don't mind. I added a green arrow to your chart to show you where that 180K is. And that's typically what sometimes can happen with this bullish Megaphone pattern. But you could also argue that anybody can draw any pattern on any chart if you want. We'll see. But backing that up too is this fellow here. This is Titan of Crypto. And they are following the fractals, and Bitcoin is slowing down at resistance level, and it's very common before a big upward explosive move. There's always a consolidation. The way I like to talk about it, and that's the resistance wall up there, which is kind of an ascending line going higher, but it's like going up a mountain. You have all these little plateau levels where you hike for a day and you rest, and you hike for a day and you rest. Well, that's exactly what's happening here. So the big ascension is going to come later per Titan of Crypto. And final thing, plan B again. This is super interesting as well because we now have realized price, which is held true in all past bull runs. We are 2 months into the bull run per plan B. I think we're 15 months into the bull run, but that's just me because I break it up into early bull and full bull. Full bull began January of this year. Now, when you look at this chart here, focus on the black line. That's the realized cost price. The black line, the RP, is now at $60,000, everybody. Why do we care? Guess why? Because during a bull run, the price does not dip below the RP, which is at 60K. Therefore, the new Bitcoin price floor is $60,000. and selling at 63, 61, 62,000 is selling at the floor, which is not smart. So be careful what you listen to. Blaze your own trail, as I always say. Shout out to Discord who shared this morning. But do not follow the majority. Always follow the right way. Do not be part of the 98%, the 99%. Always blaze your own trail, ladies and gentlemen. Most important thing ever. You will not be successful in anything you do if you listen to others and follow others. You have to make your own tracks, okay? Stern words on a Wednesday. Thank you all for coming. Thank you to the mods in the chat. Very important. I wouldn't be where I am if I listened to anybody in my life. So anyway, hope you enjoy the show. I'll be back tomorrow. All right. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day. Bye-bye.